David Letterman's pen fell from his hand and rolled off the desk. Paul Schaefer stopped playing mid. The studio audience of 200 people fell into absolute silence. Sitting across from Dave was Johnny Cash, the man in black, the voice of Outlaws and Prisoner, the legend who'd played Folsom Prison and San Quentin. And right now, on this cold November night in 1983, Cash was crying. Not performed, not act, really crying. His massive hands covered his face. His shoulders shook. And what he was about to confess would expose the darkest secret of his 40-year career, a secret that would shatter everything America believed about redemption. November 17, 1983. Studio 6A at Rockefeller Center. Late Night with David Letterman was in its second season, still finding its rhythm, still proving itself against Carson's Tonight Show juggernaut. The wood-paneled set glowed under warm tungsten light. The retro desk sat center stage. Paul Schaefer's keyboard gleamed. The New York skyline sparkled through tall windows behind. David Letterman, 36 years old, sat behind his desk shuffling blue index cards. His curly brown hair was perfectly imperfect. His tie hung loose. That gap-toothed grin was ready to deploy. He was nervous tonight, more nervous than usual. Tonight's guest was genuine royal Johnny Cash. The booking had taken a year. Cash didn't do late-night television often. At 51, he'd already lived 3 lives. Poor kid from Arkansas, Cotton Field. Rockabilly pioneer at Sun Records alongside Elvis. Country music revolutionary. Drug addict who nearly died a dozen times. Born-again Christian. Prison reformer. Living legend. Cash had just released a new album. His people agreed to one show. They chose Letterman because Dave was young, respectful, and wouldn't ask the same tired questions everyone always asked. The monologue went perfect. Dave killed with jokes about Reagan and the weather. The audience loved. Paul's band was tight. Everything clicked. Then came the moment. Ladies and gentlemen, Dave said, that Midwestern earnestness creeping into his voice. My next guest is a genuine American icon. He's sold over 50 million records. He's been to hell and back, sometimes twice in the same week. He's the man in black. Please welcome Johnny Cash. Paul's band launched in Folsom Prison Blue. The curtain pulled back, and Johnny Cash walked out. The audience erupted. Standing ovation. This was history walking onto a talk show set. Cash moved with that distinctive slow grace, like a panther in no particular hurry. He wore his signature outfit, all black. Black suit, black shirt, black boots. His face was weathered, lined with every mile he'd traveled, every pill he'd swallowed, every night in a jail cell or a church pew. His hair was jet black, obviously dyed, but nobody cared. Those dark eyes held stories that could fill libraries. Dave stood, shook his hand. That handshake firm, real, the grip of a man who'd worked cotton fields as a child. Cash sat in the guest chair. He smiled at the audience, a slow smile that seemed to cost him something. Mr. Cash, thank you for being here, Dave said. Call me John, and thank you for having. His voice. God, that voice. Like gravel rolling down a mountain, like thunder warning of a coming storm. The deepest voice in music, maybe the deepest voice in America. They talked about the new album, about the old days at Sun Records, about Carl Perkins and Jerry Lee Lewis and Elvis. Cash told a funny story about Elvis being scared of his own swimming pool. The audience laughed. Everything was going perfect. Then Dave asked the question, John, you've been very open about your struggles with addiction, with pills, with alcohol, with dark, and you've been sober now for, what, almost 15 years? Cash nodded slowly. 16 years this past April. That's incredible. What made the difference? What finally got you clean? It was a softball question, an invitation for Cash to tell his redemption story, the story everyone knew. How his wife June Carter saved, how he found Jesus, how he turned his life around. But something shifted in Cash's face. The smile disappeared. His jaw tightened. Those dark eyes went somewhere else, somewhere far away. Can I tell you the truth, Dave? Cash's voice was quieter now, almost a whisper. Of course, the real truth, not the story I usually tell. Dave leaned forward. The audience sensed something. The air changed. Paul glanced over from his keyboard. I got clean, Cash said slowly, because I killed someone. The studio went silent. Not television silent, real silent. The kind of silent that makes your ears ring. Dave's face went white. I'm sorry. What Johnny Cash said next would freeze the blood of everyone in that studio. Cash's hands gripped the arms of the guest chair. His knuckles went white. September 1968. I was so high I didn't know my own name. Pills, booze, whatever I could find. I'd been awake for 4 days straight, hallucinating, seeing things that weren't there. His voice cracked. I was driving somewhere in Tennessee, I think, middle of the night, and I hit a kid on a bicycle. The audience gasped. Someone in the back row started crying. Dave sat froze, not sure if he should stop this, go to commercial, save Cash from himself. But Cash kept talking. I didn't stop. I was too high, too scared, too gone. I just kept driving, left him there in the road. Tears started down Cash's face. This man, this legend, this voice of American grit and redemption function, was crying on national television. Next morning, I woke up in a motel room. Couldn't remember where I'd been, what I'd done. But my car had damn blood on the bumper. And on the radio, they were talking about a hit and a 15-year-old boy named Michael Patterson dead. Paul Schaefer's hands lifted off the key. The band members behind him sat frozen. I knew it was me, Cash continued. I knew. But I was too much of a coward to admit it. Too scared of prison, of losing everything, of facing what I'd done. Dave found his voice. John, are you sure? Maybe it wasn't. It was me, David. I know it was me. The timing, the location, the damage to my car. It was me. Cash wiped his face with both hands. Those massive hands that had played guitar for presidents and prisoners. I've never told anyone. Not June. Not my kid. Not my pastor. I've been carrying this for 15 years. And it's killing me. The studio was in shock. Cameras kept rolling because nobody knew what else to do. This was beyond television now. This was confession. This was a man's soul splitting open on live TV. Dave did something then that nobody expected. He stood up from behind his desk, walked around it, and sat down on the edge of the stage right next to Cash's chair. Not in front of, not above, beside John, Dave said quietly. Why are you telling this now? Why here? Cash looked at him with eyes full of pain. Because I can't carry it anymore. Because every time someone calls me a good Christian, a redeemed man, a role model, I want to scream. I'm a fraud, David. I'm a killer who got away with it. But then something happened that nobody saw coming. The stage door opened. A young man, maybe 30 years old, walked onto the set. He wasn't supposed to be there. Security started moving, but Dave waved them off. The young man walked straight to Johnny Cash. He was crying. Mr. Cash, he said, his voice shaking. My name is David Patterson. Cash looked up, confused, terrified. Michael Patterson was my brother. The audience gasped again. This couldn't be real. This couldn't be happening. Cash stood up, his whole body trembled. I'm sorry, God. I'm so sorry. I killed your brother. I killed him and I ran, and I've been lying about it for 50 years. David Patterson shook his head, tears streaming down his face. No, Mr. Cash, you did. Silent. My brother died in 1968. That part is true. Hit and run. But they caught the driver 3 days later. A truck driver from Memphis named Robert Klein. He confessed. He went to prison. He's still there. Cash staggered back. Dave caught him, helped him sit back down. But the timing? My car, the blood. You hit a deer, Mr. Cash. The police report is public record. You called it in yourself that morning. Said you hit a deer and couldn't remember where. You were high, but you didn't kill anyone. Cash put his face in his hands and sobbed. Deep, wrenching sobs that came from somewhere ancient. David Patterson knelt down in front of Mr. Cash. I've been following your career since I was a kid. Your music got me losing my brother. Through my dad's drink. Through everything. When I heard you were going to be on this show, I drove here from Ohio just to be in the audience. I never expected this. He reached out and took Cash's hand. You didn't kill my brother, but you've been killing yourself with guilt over something you didn't do, and I can't let you keep doing that. Cash looked at this young man, this stranger, this angel who'd appeared from nowhere. Why would you help? Even if I didn't kill your brother, I've done terrible things. I've hurt people. Because that's what grace is. David Patterson said simply, it's not for people who deserve it. It's for people who need it. What happened in the next 60 seconds would change everything anyone thought they knew about redemption. Paul Schaefer began to play. Soft, gentle, amazing grace. The hymn that everyone knows. The hymn about being lost and then found. Cash and David Patterson embrace. A genuine embrace. Two men connected by tragedy and misunderstanding, and something bigger than both of. The audience was openly weeping. Crew member, camera operator, even the stage manager in the wing. Dave stood there, witnessing something he'd never forget. This wasn't television. This was real redemption. Messy and painful and beautiful. When they finally separated, Cash wiped his eyes and looked at the camera. For 15 years, he said, his voice raw, I've been telling people that Jesus saved, that June saved me, that sobriety saved me, and all of that's true. But what really saved me was forgiveness I didn't deserve. He gestured to David Patterson. This young man just gave me a gift I can never repay. He freed me from a prison I built for myself. A prison of guilt and shame and lies. Cash stood, steadier now, and faced the audience. How many of you are carrying some guilt, some shame, some secret you think makes you unforgivable? Hands slowly went up. A few at first, then more, then almost everyone. Let it go, Cash said. Whatever it is, let it go, because the weight will kill you. The secrets will destroy you, and you deserve better. We all deserve better. David Patterson stood beside. My brother Michael would want me to say this. Forgiveness isn't about forgetting. It's about choosing not to let the pain define you. Dave Letterman, standing to the side, was crying. He'd started this show as entertainment. It had become something else entirely. We're going to take a break, Dave said to the camera, but we'll be back because this matters. This is real, and we need to see it through. They cut to commercial, but nobody moved. Cash and David Patterson stood together, talking quietly. The audience stayed seated, afraid to break the spell. When they came back, Dave had 3 chairs set up. Him, Cash, and David Patterson like equal, like friend. Folk, Dave said. I don't know what to say about what just happened. I've never seen anything like it. I don't think anyone has. Cash nodded. I came here tonight planning to confess to murder, to end my career, to face the consequences of what I thought I'd done. Instead, I found out I've been punishing myself for nothing. Not for nothing. David Patterson interjected. You hit a deer and felt guilty enough to believe you killed a person. That shows the kind of man you are. That shows that shows soul. But I have done terrible things. Cash said. Real thing. I abandoned my first wife and kids when I got famous. I stole to pay for drugs. I lied to everyone who loved me. And you've spent 20 years making amends, David said. You've sung in prison. You've helped addicts. You've been honest about your struggle. That's redemption, Mr. Cash. That's what it looks like. Dave looked at both of them. Can I ask you something? Both of them. What do we do with it? What do we do with guilt? With shame? With the things we've actually done wrong? Cash thought about it. Then, we tell the truth. We make amends where we can. And then we forgive ourselves. Because holding on to it doesn't help anyone. David Patterson added, and we let other people forgive us. Even when we don't think we deserve it. Especially when we don't think we deserve it. Paul played them out soft. The audience applauded. But it wasn't entertainment applause. It was the sound of people who'd witnessed something sacred. Cash stood, shook Dave's hand, hugged David Patterson one more time. As he walked off stage, he turned back. Thank you, David. Both David. You saved my life. And 20 years later, the rest of the story finally came out. NBC executives were furious. Too heavy. They said. Too real. They never re-aired the episode. They tried to bury it. But you can't bury truth. Johnny Cash went home that night and told June everything. She cried with him, held him, told him she already knew he'd been carrying something terrible. She just didn't know what. He called his kids and told. He called his pastor and told. He finally let go of the guilt that had been slowly killing him for 15 years. David Patterson and Johnny Cash stayed in touch. They became friends, real friends. When Cash toured through Ohio, David would come to the show. When David got married, Cash sang at his wedding. In 2003, Johnny Cash died at age 71. By then, he recorded some of his most powerful music. The American Recording Series, songs about death and redemption and grace. Songs that could only come from a man who'd walked through hell and somehow made it back. At Cash's funeral, David Patterson spoke. He told the story of that night in 1983. The confession, the misunderstanding, the forgiveness. Johnny Cash thought he was a murderer, David said. He carried that weight for 15 years. And when he finally let it go, when he finally accepted grace, he became free. Really free. And that freedom is what you hear in his final recording. That's the sound of a man who's been forgiven. Dave Letterman attended the funeral. Afterward, he stood at Cash's grave for a long time. A reporter asked him what he was thinking. I'm thinking about November 17th. 1983, Dave said. The night Johnny Cash taught me what redemption actually looked. Not perfect, not clean, just honest. What did you learn? The reporter asked. That we're all carrying some, all of us, and the weight will kill us if we don't let it go. Cash thought he killed someone and lived with that for 15 years. Most of us are carrying much smaller things, but we hold on to them just as tight. Dave paused. That night changed my whole approach to the show, to life, because Cash showed me that the most courageous thing you can do is tell the truth, even when it destroys, especially when it destroys. But here's what Dave never told anyone publicly. Here's the rest of the story. After that episode aired, Dave received a letter from Robert Klein, the actual truck driver who'd killed Michael Patterson in 1968. The man in prison. Klein had seen the show in the prison TV room. He wrote to Dave explaining that he'd always felt terrible about that night, that he tried to run but couldn't live with himself, that he confessed and accepted his punishment. But I never knew, Klein wrote, that someone else had been carrying guilt for what I did. Tell Mr. Cash I'm sorry. Tell him I hope he can forgive himself. Tell him that grace is real. Dave never showed that letter to anyone. He kept it in his desk drawer for 20 years, until Cash died. Then he sent it to June Carter Cash. She called him, crying. Thanks, she said. John never fully believed he was innocent. This letter, this would have meant everything. I'm sorry I didn't send it sooner, Dave said. You sent it at exactly the right time. June replied, now I can let him go, knowing he's finally free. The legacy of that night isn't about television. It's about grace, about forgiveness, about the prison cells we build in our own mind. Johnny Cash spent 15 years believing he was a murderer, and even when he found out he wasn't, part of him couldn't accept it, because we're so much better at holding on to guilt than accepting grace. That's what that night taught Dave. That's what it taught everyone watching. That we're all Johnny Cash, all carrying weight we don't need to carry, all punishing ourselves for crimes we didn't commit, or for crimes we've already paid for 1,000 times over. And maybe, just maybe, it's time to let it go, to accept that we're human, that we've done wrong, that we've also done right, and that grace isn't something we earn. It's something we receive. Johnny Cash received grace that night from David Patterson, a stranger who became a friend, a victim's brother who chose compassion over judgment. And in receiving the grace, Cash finally became the man everyone thought he already was. Not perfect, not sinless, but forgiven and free.